The Marconi Company had mastered sending the human voice over radio waves, and their tests in Ballybunion had proved that they could send speech across the Atlantic Ocean. By the start of 1920, they turned their attention back to Chelmsford.
In January 1920, they started a series of experiments. These were private Marconi Company-only tests. They sent telegrams out to all the Marconi stations around the world saying, please listen between 7 and 7:30 in the morning and 7 and 7:30 in the evening. And they were just going to transmit speech. Initially, they just read from Bradshaw's train timetable. But let's face it, that was very boring. And after 3 or 4 days, Bill Ditcham did something else. And what he did was going to change the world. He bought a newspaper and he sat down at 7 o'clock in the evening and he just started reading from the first page. Hello CQ, this is station MZX calling from Chelmsford, and here is the news.
The test broadcast soon began to get a following, and people wanted to hear more.
Round and Ditcham's tests, when Ditcham started reading the news, were really popular with the amateur community. They got a lot of feedback saying that people had enjoyed that, and it became really obvious that this was actually a means for disseminating kind of wider information to an audience and could be used as entertainment. People were enjoying listening to news, occasional gramophone records, on the radio, and actually there was the potential for this to be used much more widely, possibly for live musicians and live entertainment as well.
In early 1920, Winifred Sayer, a young woman who worked at Hoffman's, the ball bearing company, was invited to take part in these experimental broadcasts. In doing so, she became the first woman to sing live on British radio. Winifred was the lead singer in a local band called Freddie and the Funyuns. She was invited to sing 3 times between the 23rd of February and the 6th of March. More than 60 years later, Winifred, by now 89-year-old Mrs. Collins, gave an interview to the BBC about what had happened.
I sang a duet with this man, and I forget what I did sing. It was very short, because we didn't have any music, you see. We had to sing with no music, and that was a bit difficult.
Did you have any sense at all at the time that you were creating something that was going to revolutionise?
Oh, no, I never thought anything about it. I mean, nobody said that. You thought it was an experiment, you know. I suppose it was, only it happened to come off. You know, it happened to work. But from an outsider like I was, I mean, well, it was just sort of did something they asked you to do.
The first song Winifred sang was an Edwardian ballad called Absent. There is no recording of this experiment, but we can give you an idea of how it might have sounded from this accompanied version sung by Kate Smith.
Sometimes between long shadows on the grass, the little truant waves of sunlight pass. My eyes grew dim with tears.
I suppose really I was very honoured that they, I was asked to do that. Apparently I was. Now I come to think with hindsight, I suppose, but I don't think anybody realised that at the time, you know, that it was anything going to be so important.
Messages came in from all over the world, from people who had heard the broadcasts. There were reports from all around Britain, and from as far away as the east coast of America, and from an RAF squadron leader in Iran. But they weren't the only people following what was happening in Chelmsford. Lord Northcliffe, the wealthy owner of the Daily Mail, was also excited by this new technology. So Arthur Burrows, the Marconi publicity manager, began to work with the paper on a public event, the first British live entertainment broadcast. Chelmsford was about to be visited by one of the most famous singers in the world.